Hello again, and welcome to another Excel at Excel. My name is Lloyd, and I am here with Patrick.
Hey, Lloyd.
Hey, Patrick, how you doing? So, if you don't mind telling us what exactly we're going to be working on today, I know because you just told me, but let's tell the viewers here. It's something that I find quite interesting, and I'm sure they'll find interesting as well. Go ahead and let us know what we'll be working on today.
Right. Well, last week, we talked about some practical applications of functions, um, but I also mentioned macros and how you can use macros to automate a lot of tasks to save yourself some time. So today, let's see here. There we go. We want to talk about macros. So we have actually in my fancy little spread or cover
Ah,
sheet introduction to macros.
very cool. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to scare anybody. I mean, macros really, you hear it all the time. You hear people talking about macros, and it sounds like it's a big deal. It's a really powerful tool, but it's very simple to do. So I think the reason a lot of people don't like to use macros is because they think it's a really hard thing to do. I got to tell you, if you've been using uh, Excel for any length of time, you already use macros and you just don't know it. Let me show you what I mean. For instance, yeah, if I have this list, and these are actually some of my favorite Texas sports people, there's 44 names there. Okay. And let's say I wanted to alphabetize that list. Well, that's a really long list to alphabetize. So I might start by just typing Biggio and Bagwell. And let's see, who would be next in this list? Bethea. Oops. What about all these people down here? Is there anyone? Okay, Abercrombie. See, that would have already been
There we
way up
go.
there. So, I mean, we've spent a lot of time and we don't have a very good list yet.
Hmm.
But I'm going to show you all of this ribbon up here. These are all macros. I mean, these are preset macros. So let me show you. Uh, for instance, let's just take. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just um, we're going to get rid of that column right there. And let's just sort this with using a macro. So let's use data. We go over here to the data tab and this little A to Z button right there. Look at that. They're alphabetized.
Auto
That
sort.
was a macro.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a macro that Windows put in there. They knew that would be a very popular function or a very popular macro, so they preset that macro. And what did that take? A second.
Yeah, it's super quick. And you went through 44 names or so, so
Right. And we can scroll down. You can see it's uh, A to W. I don't know why. I guess there's some Z athletes, but I couldn't find any. I couldn't think of any. But so that's one example of using macros. Here's another one. Now, last week we talked about some functions like sum, average. Here's a couple more max min. Yeah.
oh,
So you may have seen a couple of skips in our program here. We're having some technical difficulties. I'm not quite sure what that is, but um, you see here I have a max and a min. I'm just going to tell you how to do it because if I show you, it's going to lock up my Excel again, and we don't want to do that. But basically, it's the same thing. If I want to know, say, the biggest number in that column, I put my cursor right here, max, and over here, look here, max. I just click on max, drag, and enter. Same thing with minimum. Come over here, find min. It's the same function. So it operates the same, same macro rather. It operates the same regardless of what function you want to do. That, again, that's another one of those preset macros that Windows has done.
right.
Yeah, so just so everyone will know, we've really had um, some technical difficulties. We think there may be an issue with Microsoft and an update they did yesterday. So we're going to try to see if we can't skin this cat a little different way.
Yeah,
Using Zoom to record this now, and we're going to try to piece them together and hopefully it'll work out. So bear with us, if you will.
we'll see what
Uh,
happens.
right. So I just want to show one more before we get into how to do a macro recording. But just one more example of how Microsoft has preset some macros, and that's in formatting. So for instance, let's say Merging Center. Let's say I wanted to put that in the middle of this yellow block here. Well, I could just select this whole block and right click on it, come down to Format Cells and tell it alignment, horizontal center across selection, and merge these cells. Okay, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead, I like to come up here and just hit this button, Merge and Center.
Bam. Easy.
Just like that. That's a macro. Formatting some text. Let's put some text in here. All right. So let's see. Make it where you can read it. All right. So I put some text in there. And let's say I wanted to make that bold. Well, I could right click and do a format cell and come over here to font and tell it bold. Okay. Well, instead of doing that, I can just come up here and hit this bold.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. Or formatting some numbers. We did a little bit of this last week. Let's say, you know what? I like to have a column or a comma between my, every 3 digits. So I can just come up here and just click that. I put a comma in there. And looky here, I've just made that money.
Yep.
Just like that.
Easy formatting.
So, yeah, macros are just a wonderful thing once you get them set up. So with that said, let's just jump into how do we actually record a macro. Well, first thing you have to do is you have to turn on, if it's not already, you have to turn on the Developers tab. And you see up here, I have a Developers tab. Mm-hmm. But to do that, it's real simple. You just right-click anywhere on this ribbon. Doesn't matter where. Just right-click, and then you come down where it says Customize the Ribbon. Mm-hmm. And it's going to pop this menu up. And you see right here where it says Developer. If you don't have a developer menu now, this box is blank. Just click on it and OK. Yeah. And now you have the developers menu.
And unless you've done that, I think it's always going to be unchecked. I think it's a default that they do.
Yes.
And
correct.
It's just, it's something that, you don't necessarily need for average everyday Excel use. But if you want to start using some of the more fun things like macros in this, definitely make sure you turn that on. It's not going to affect anything either. It's just going to open up more options.
So. Right. Yeah, I think they do that because you have a fairly limited amount of real estate up here, and they, if most people don't ever use that, so that, it is defaulted to off.
Yeah.
Good point. But so anyway, so now that you've got your developers tab, you go in. I'm just going to run through the instructions, then we're going to actually do this. So it's going to make a whole lot more sense once I finish this. But there's going to be, when you go into developer, there's a record macro right there. You just click on that record macro, and when you do that, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, you get to name it. And I like to name it something very descriptive because I do very small macros. Instead of doing one huge macro, I might just I'm going to delete a column, okay? And so I might name this macro delete column A, okay? That's simple, because that way I can reuse this macro hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Okay, if I know I want to delete column A in 10 different macros, well, I don't have to recreate this. Then if I want to, I can create a shortcut key, Control plus, let's say, delete. Okay, Control Shift D will now run that macro. I want to make sure and store it in this workbook. This is, well, assuming I'm going to use it. Actually, when we go to our example, we'll be using it in that workbook. But you want to store it wherever you're going to be using that macro, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Here you can put a description in here. This is to delete. The name is pretty descriptive, but okay. And you do that, and I'm not going to hit the OK because I'm actually going to cancel out of this. We're going to do a real example here in a minute. But when you hit OK, it's going to actually start recording. Then whatever you do here, it's going to do once you have that macro. And once you're finished, doing what you want to do. You click that again and it stops it. So that was a lot of stuff. Let's actually do one.
Okay.
So let's say, oh, let's record a macro right now. All right, so we're going to record the macro now. And this pops up, record your macro dialog box, and we're just going to call it my first macro. And let's say we want to give it a shortcut key of F for first macro. Okay. And I want to describe it. You don't have to do that, but I kind of like to, because if I want to come back and see what the functionality of this is, I like to know what my thinking was at the time. And I was going to say this is my first macro. I would be a lot more descriptive if I were actually doing that. But then you just hit OK. And we're going to come over here and I'm going to type in all caps, my first macro. And then I'm just going to come down and say, this is my first macro. Woohoo.
Woohoo.
And then I'm just going to stop recording.
Okay.
There we go. Now, let me delete all that stuff. And I'm just going to put the cursor right back there and watch what happens. So we just come over here, click that macro button, my first macro, let's run it. It put it right back in there.
Instant too. It didn't like take your delays or anything. It just,
Right.
everything that you had typed, it was in there now.
Just like that. So let's take a look at an exercise. And okay, this is a real simple example, and no one would write a macro to do this, obviously. But let's say, and we're going to use that same spreadsheet I used last week, and I'm just going to, let's call this trimming the fat off the meat here. Okay. And one of the things I used to have to do, people that would do this report, first thing they have to delete a whole bunch of columns. Okay, well, you highlight those and delete them. Okay, there's some more columns. I'm going to do that. And so let's delete those. And maybe I want to delete, it doesn't matter. Let's say it was that column. Okay. Well, that's time consuming. And what if, okay, let's hit that. What if instead of hitting that, I accidentally hit that one? Those look fairly similar.
Right.
Okay, well, that would be a really bad mistake. So let's come over here and let's just show you by using a macro how I could do this without errors. Record macro, and let's call this delete some columns. And you see me writing it like that with a small d on the delete. That's just kind of a stylistic thing that a lot of you see that in a lot of programming. I'm not sure if you do that, Loyd.
Use normal stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, that's just kind of my style. It just makes it easier. If you see a whole bunch of commands at once, it just makes it easier to sort them and see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to dispense with the shortcut key. We all know how that works. And this is, I'm just going to delete a few columns. I would be much more descriptive if I were doing this, but for our purposes here, and click OK. And I'm just going to come over here and let's delete a few of these columns. Okay, let's delete a few more columns. And let's say material received plan date. We're going to delete that column. Okay, stop recording. So I'm going to do some undos real quick. Okay, so this is where we were originally.
Mm-hmm.
Let's run that macro. Delete some columns. Let's run it. Just deleted all the columns.
Easy peasy.
Very simple to do. So that's the power of macros. And this is just a very basic macro sample example. Trust me, once you start getting used to doing these, you're going to branch out. You're going to start doing some really fancy things with it. Like again, how I talked about that tool that I showed last week. I had so many macros running in that thing, it took it 2 minutes to run.
Right.
Okay, so I mean that you can get really fancy and instead of spending 3 hours at your desk, go ahead and hit that run button and go get a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, something super easy that just it's gonna make it easier on you. But you did mention like so saving it in the workbook. So will this macro only work on this workbook then that you have currently, or can I use it on another workbook?
Well, you could. I would need to set it up a little differently, but for today's exercise, I just wanted
Okay.
to show one that would be just for this particular workbook, and we can get into that. We'll do some more advanced macros in the future
Okay.
uh, and show how that might work.
That
But
sounds
before
fun.
we leave, I do have a couple of bonus items. Let's say
Ooh, all right. Bonus round.
I want to peel back the curtain just a little bit and just show you when you write this macro. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So here's the actual code. Don't make a liar out of me. Let's see here. That's right. Let's step into it here. So that's what the actual code looks like. When you do all that stuff, this is what the code looks like. So you just wrote some VBA by doing that, or I just wrote some VBA by doing that, and you will too. That's just what that looks like. I don't know. I find that interesting.
Yeah, no.
But the one thing you really need to be aware of is how you save the file, because I'm going to show you. I'm going to try to save this file. Just whoops, let's back up here. Okay, when I hit that save button, see how it comes up and it says this to save a file with these features. Basically, I cannot save macros in this type of a workbook. So I'm going to click the no, and we're going to save it as some more options here. Well, actually, you don't even have to click the more options. You have this right here. You have to save it as an Excel macro enabled workbook, XLSM.
Okay.
So this is an XLSX now. You have to save it as an SM.
Okay. That
And
makes
it's just very
sense.
simple. Just do it that way. You're going to have two spreadsheets when that happens. The original and the XS and the macro enabled in the SM. But that's okay. You have to save it in this format.
Okay. So make sure that we do that there.
Yep. And that's it. That is macros. I know, a little funny here. A macro bonus. I love macro and cheese, but it's that quarantine humor, right?
Yeah. Gotta make it lighthearted in these times,
Well, and that's a good point, because sometimes Excel, or actually all these applications, get very frustrating. As we experienced working through the technical issues, it can be very frustrating. So just keep it light. You're not going to mess up anything. I think one more little bonus. If you're afraid you're going to mess up something, spreadsheet that somebody sent you, save a copy of it somewhere. Don't touch it. Work on a different copy, and if you mess it up, you still have your original.
Exactly.
Trust me, there's nothing you can do that can't be fixed.
Redundancy, redundancy, redundancy.
I
And
say that all the time. I guess
if you also need to save it on the cloud, save it in another area, there's plenty of
right.
to be redundant with it, but that's a good thing with data management in general. Always have redundant copies. So. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. We appreciate it. This has been
A pleasure.
another Excel at Excel, and we will try and get with you guys again next week. Hopefully no more technical issues, right?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, have a good one.
All right. Take care.